I was the best man at my best friend's wedding until his fiancée tried to sleep with me the night before. Hi, I'm Marcus. I'm 31. And 3 days ago, I walked out of a wedding I was supposed to be best man at because the groom, my oldest friend, tried to screw me over. Literally. Let me back up. I run a niche security firm based out of Denver. Corporate clients, VIPs, high-end home systems, the kind of people who need cameras that see through walls and panic rooms disguised as wine cellars. It's weird, but it pays well. I'm not flashy about it. I wear the same 3 black polos, drive a matte gray Audi, and keep my circle small. One person who's always been in that circle. Daniel, we met freshman year in college. He was the loud, flirty finance major with the $300 haircut. I was the quiet ROTC guy with the buzz cut and a minor in Arabic. Somehow, it worked. He partied. I drove him home. He dated. I fixed his messes. We stayed close after graduation. He went into real estate and started flipping luxury properties. I did a stint overseas, then came back and built my company from scratch. We were opposites, but brothers in all the ways that mattered. So, when Daniel got engaged to this woman named Elise, I was happy for him. Genuinely. She was gorgeous. Smart. Way too put together for him, honestly. Seemed to mellow him out, which I thought was a good thing. I wasn't close with her. She always seemed a little too aware of everyone's social rank, but I chalked it up to nerves. I mean, planning a wedding with someone like Daniel is probably like herding cats in a hurricane. The wedding was set to be this massive event at a private vineyard outside Boulder. Think black tie, champagne towers, drones doing aerial photography, a custom cocktail menu named after their dogs. Daniel asked me to be his best man, and of course, I said yes. I helped him through every stage, pick the ring, stood with him while he practiced the proposal, dealt with his panic attacks about cold feet. I gave the toast at the rehearsal dinner. I organized the groomsmen's suits, the bachelor weekend, everything, and then, the night before the wedding, everything exploded. It was around 11:30 p.m., and I was in my suite at the Vineyard Hotel. The rehearsal dinner had wrapped, everyone was drunk or close to it, and I was just trying to wind down. There was a knock at my door. I opened it. Elise was standing there, alone, hair up, makeup still perfect, holding a bottle of wine and looking, not like someone who was 12 hours away from getting married. "Can we talk?" she asked. I should have said no, but I didn't. She stepped inside like she owned the place. Didn't wait for me to offer. Just walked past, set the wine on the table like we were about to catch up on college gossip instead of, discuss her impending vows. I shut the door slowly. "Elise, what are you doing?" She turned to face me, arms crossed. "Do you have any idea how many people told me not to marry Daniel?" Okay, not the opening I expected. I stayed quiet, waiting. Let her talk. 3 of my friends, she went on, my sister, even his own mother. But I kept telling them no, he's trying. He's growing up. You don't know him like Marcus does. She said my name like it meant something more than it should. "Elise, you're nervous. It's the night before your wedding. You're overwhelmed." "I'm not drunk," she cut in. "I haven't had a single drink tonight. I wanted to be clear-headed. I wanted you to understand that this isn't a mistake." "Elise," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "whatever you think this is, it's not happening. You're marrying my best friend tomorrow. You know that, right?" She stepped closer, close enough to smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive. "And what if I told you I wished I wasn't?" I backed up. 1 step. 2. Kept space between us like it was a live wire. "Elise, come on. Don't act like you haven't noticed. The way I look at you. The way you look at me. You've been watching me all week like you're holding your breath. I see you." I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a moment back when they first got engaged where I'd wondered what she saw in Daniel. And maybe, yeah, there were glances. But they were never meant to mean anything. And I sure as hell never expected this. "You need to leave," I said, voice firm now. "We're not doing this. You're not doing this." Her face changed, hardened, like a switch flipped. "I knew it," she said. "You'd never go against him, even if you wanted to. You'd just keep being his shadow, cleaning up his messes." She grabbed the bottle of wine and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. I stood there in silence, and that's when I knew. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I barely slept. Woke up 2 hours before my alarm, ran 3 miles around the vineyard trails just to clear my head. Tried to act like it hadn't happened, like Elise hadn't walked into my room, and tried to implode everything, but it hung in the back of my mind all morning, like a live grenade with a loose pin. The ceremony was set for 4 p.m. By noon, the place was buzzing, staff in headsets, flowers being wheeled around, guests arriving in black town cars and Teslas. Daniel was in one of the suites getting ready, drinking scotch to early in the day, talking a mile a minute, the way he always did when he was nervous. He pulled me aside while the other groomsmen were adjusting cufflinks and joking about getting cold feet. "You good?" he asked, squinting at me. "Yeah, just tired. You sure?" He lowered his voice. "Because Elise said she stopped by your room last night." My stomach dropped. "She said you were acting weird. Said maybe you were having second thoughts about being best man." I told her that didn't sound like you, but he trailed off. Studying me, I nodded slowly, like I was hearing him, but my brain was busy replaying her exact words. "I wanted you to understand. This isn't a mistake. This was the trap." She'd covered her ass in advance. Flipped the narrative. So if I said anything, I'd look like the problem. "Elise is stressed," I said. "Weddings do that to people." Daniel smiled, relieved. "Exactly. I told her that. I told her you were solid. You've always been solid." He clapped my shoulder and handed me the rings to hold. Like nothing had happened. I should have told him. Right then. Should have warned him. But I didn't. Because I needed to be sure. So I made a decision. 15 minutes before the ceremony, I slipped out of the groomsmen's room and made my way through the Vineyard Hotel, down the hall to the bridal suite. Knocked once. The door opened. Elise stood there in her wedding dress, veil off, makeup perfect, face pale. She didn't look surprised to see me. "I'm not here to cause a scene," I said. "But I need to ask you one question, and I want the truth." She didn't move. Just waited. "Why me?" I asked. "Why come to me last night?" She hesitated. "Just for a second. But it was enough. Because you were always the one Daniel measured himself against," she said. "And I wanted to see what he was afraid of." That was the moment I knew. Daniel wasn't the one with cold feet. She was marrying him out of convenience, money, status, image. But in her head, she'd always wondered if she'd picked the wrong man in the circle. I left without saying a word, and when the music started 15 minutes later, I wasn't standing next to the groom. Daniel noticed the second he stepped into the ceremony space. Everyone else was standing, guests turned in their chairs, the string quartet playing some slowed-down indie song that was supposed to sound classy. But Daniel's eyes went straight to the front, scanning the line of groomsmen. I wasn't there. Panic started to creep across his face. He looked around fast, probably expecting me to step out from somewhere with a joke about cold feet or needing to pee. But I wasn't coming. Instead, I was 200 yards away, sitting in my car at the edge of the vineyard, watching the wedding from a safe distance. Because I wasn't going to be part of a lie, my phone started buzzing. First, the planner, then one of the groomsmen, then Daniel. I didn't pick up. Not yet. I watched through the windshield as Elise made her grand entrance, walking down the aisle like she hadn't tried to kiss her Fiancée's best friend 12 hours earlier. She looked calm, serene, like she'd made peace with whatever internal war she'd been fighting. I wondered, in that moment, if she thought she'd won, that maybe I'd stayed quiet, that maybe she'd spooked me into silence, and in a way, she had, because I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to blow up the wedding in front of 200 people who'd flown in, dressed up, spent money. I didn't want to punish Daniel, either. I wanted truth. So I waited until the moment the officiant cleared his throat and said, "Dearly beloved." Then I hit send. The message went to Daniel's phone, and his iPad, and his email, all linked, all set up by me 6 months ago when I helped him set up the shared home office he and Elise were supposed to use. After the wedding, the message contained a simple video file taken on my phone, time-stamped. Elise at my hotel room door, her voice clear, her intentions clearer. I watched from my car as Daniel's expression changed. One moment listening, next moment pale. He reached into his jacket, pulled out his phone, tapped, watched. I could see it in his eyes. Disbelief, confusion, Something shattering behind. Elise was still smiling, holding his hand at the altar. Until she saw his face, she said something. He didn't respond, just looked up, past the guests, and toward the vineyard rows where he knew I had parked. He didn't find me. I was already pulling out, because some messes aren't meant to be fixed, some are meant to be walked away from. I didn't go home, took Highway 36 west, and just drove. No destination, no plan, just air in my lungs and four wheels eating up the road while my phone buzzed like it owed someone money. By the time I stopped for gas in Netherlands, I had 27 missed calls and a stack of texts that could have filled a novel. Daniel had sent one message, just one. Tell me this isn't real. Didn't reply, because it was real, and we both knew it. I found a cabin rental last minute, nothing fancy, no Wi-Fi, no TV, just a fireplace and a view of the trees. Sat on the porch for hours, watching the wind move through the pines, trying to figure out what I was feeling. Guilt? No, relief. Because the truth was, I'd been carrying Daniel's weight for years, cleaning up after him, making excuses when he screwed up, playing the responsible one, the fixer, the friend who never said no. And this was the last straw. He'd almost married a woman who didn't love him, who wanted something adjacent to love, comfort, image, whatever the hell you call it, when someone picks you because you're the best option on paper. And if I hadn't been there, if I hadn't seen it, he would have walked blindfolded into a life built on lies. So no, I didn't feel guilty, but I did feel done. 3 days later, I drove back to Denver. My assistant looked like she'd seen a ghost when I walked in. Daniel's been calling the office, she said, eyes wide. He said it's urgent, I'll call him. I told her, but I didn't. Not until that night. I met him at a bar we used to go to after college. Low ceilings, sticky floors, the kind of place that never updated its jukebox or its beer selection. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in a booth in the back, nursing something dark. He looked wrecked. Hey, I said, sliding into the seat across from him. He didn't speak right away, just stared at his glass. Then finally, why didn't you tell me sooner? I wasn't sure you'd believe me. He laughed, but it wasn't funny, just bitter. I always believed you, even when you were wrong. I believed you. That was the problem. He nodded. Took another drink. She said you misunderstood, he said. Said she was just venting, that she never meant anything by it. Do you believe that? He didn't answer. Did you love her? I asked. Yeah, he said quietly. Or I thought I did. Then I'm sorry. We sat in silence for a while. Then he looked up at me, and his eyes were clearer than I'd seen in years. I don't think I ever hated you, he said. But I was always jealous. You always had this way of knowing who people really were. I never could tell until it was too late. That's not a gift, I said. It just means I've seen too much. He raised his glass. I raised mine. We didn't toast. We didn't need to. Some friendships don't need saving. They just need the truth. The fallout was exactly what you'd expect from a wedding that detonated halfway through the vows. The event planner tried to salvage it, told everyone there was a technical issue with the ceremony. Like the groom discovering his fiancée tried to seduce his best man, was the same as a bad sound system. Guests were ushered to the cocktail area while Daniel vanished. Elise cried in a locked bridal suite, and the string quartet kept playing like the Titanic band on the way down. By the next day, the story had legs. Not the true story, of course, just bits and pieces floating through the grapevine. Something happened, people whispered. He walked out. She said something awful. There was a video, and in the middle of it all, my name. Apparently, Elise's version of events was that I had feelings for her, that I'd made a move, got rejected, and when I realized she was marrying Daniel, I lashed out. A convenient lie. Self-preservation wrapped in projection. Would have been easy to deny, to go public, but I didn't, because I didn't owe these people anything, and the people who mattered, they already knew the truth. Daniel went dark for about a week. No calls, no texts. I gave him space, let him process. Then one night, he showed up at my place. No warning, no text, just a knock at the door around 10:30 p.m. I opened it. He was holding a bottle of scotch, the good kind. The kind we used to drink after finals in college, when the world felt conquerable. He didn't say anything at first, just held it out like a peace offering. I stepped aside, We sat on my balcony for a long time. City lights below us, bottle between us. Silence hanging heavy. She's telling people I cheated on her, he said finally. You didn't, I know. Doesn't matter. People believe what makes them comfortable. He nodded. Took a sip. Do you think I ever actually loved her? I think you loved who you thought she was. He stared into the glass. You were always better at seeing the angles. That's not always a good thing, really not. But in this case, it saved me. He looked at me then. Really looked. I would have been stuck in a life that looked great on Instagram and felt hollow as hell in real life. I'd have never known. Not until it was too late. I didn't say anything. Just clinked my glass against his. Sometimes, friendship isn't about saying the right thing. It's about showing up with the scotch when everything else is falling apart. 2 weeks later, Elise moved out of Daniel's place. He'd offered to give her time, space, whatever she needed to exit with dignity. She declined all of it. Packed her things in a fury one morning while he was out. Left the keys on the counter and a half-drunk matcha in the sink. That was the last physical trace of her. Well, except for the part where she kept popping up in conversations, on mutual friends' feeds, and in texts from people who suddenly weren't sure what really happened. It turns out, in the absence of truth, everyone builds their own version of it. Elise leaned into that. Told some that I'd been in love with her and tried to sabotage the wedding. Told others that Daniel had emotional issues he refused to address. Claimed she'd seen red flags but went through with the engagement out of pressure. Claimed I tried to blackmail her, which was laughable, considering I never even told anyone about the video except Daniel. But again, none of that mattered, because Daniel knew, and I knew, and the people worth keeping in your life, they pay attention to actions, not rumors. Still, things shifted. I started getting questions from people in our circle I hadn't heard from in years. Old college acquaintances. Loose business connections. One guy from our freshman dorm messaged me like, "Hey man, random, but I heard you run a private firm now? I've got a situation I'd love to pick your brain on." It was like suddenly I was visible in a way I hadn't been before. Like standing up for Daniel and walking out of that wedding had marked me as someone worth watching. And then there was her, Emma. She'd been at the wedding, not a guest part of the photography team. One of those documentary-style second shooters who blends in so well. You forget she's there until you see the final edits and realize she was everywhere. She'd emailed me about a week after everything went down. Said she had a few candids of me from the rehearsal dinner she thought I might want. Attached a folder. Nothing major, just a few shots of me laughing with Daniel, adjusting my tie, sipping a drink while staring out over the vineyard. But then she added a note. "You looked like the only person there who knew what was real." I wasn't sure how to respond to that, but I did. We got coffee, then drinks, then dinner. Turned out she'd caught more than just a few photos. She'd seen everything. The vibe shift, the tension under the surface. The way Elise would glance at me like she was trying to solve a puzzle that wouldn't cooperate. "You didn't do anything wrong," Emma told me during our second date. "You just refused to play along." That stuck with me, because it made me realize how much of the last few years I'd spent playing along, smoothing over chaos, absorbing drama that wasn't mine, holding things together for people who wouldn't have done the same for me. Elise was just the final test, and I finally passed. Daniel and I, we're good now. Not exactly like before something shifted permanently, as it should, but solid. He comes by sometimes. We don't talk about her. We talk about life, about what's next. And Emma, she's got this way of seeing the world that cuts through the noise. She doesn't play games. Doesn't ask what car I drive or who I know in the city. She asks better questions like what makes me angry about the world, or what I'd be doing if I'd never had to worry about money. She never once brought up Elise, and I liked that. One night, she asked me what I'd learned from all of it, from the wedding, the lies, the crash and burn of it all, and I said this: if someone has to lose everything to learn your worth, they were never ready to value you in the first place. She nodded, quiet for a beat, then said, "Sounds like something someone who finally stopped apologizing would say." She was right. I had. 3 months later, got a wedding invitation in the mail, not Elise's. She wasn't moving quite that fast. It was Daniel's cousin, Alicia, one of the few genuinely good people in that family. Sweet, sarcastic, the only one who'd pulled me aside the day after the vineyard disaster and whispered, "Thank you for not letting him marry her." I read the invite twice, then laughed. It was addressed to Mr. Marcus Hale and guest. Funny how things change. I brought Emma. The wedding was smaller than Daniel's was supposed to be. Less spectacle, more intention. Backyard ceremony. String lights. Tacos. They had one of those vintage trailers converted into a mobile bar. Daniel was there too, of course. He spotted me from across the yard and gave a small nod. Not a bro hug or some grand public gesture, just acknowledgement, mutual respect, and honestly, it felt right. He was different now, quieter, sharper, like someone who'd finally stopped playing the lead in other people's versions of success and started writing his own. Later, as people danced and the sky turned navy blue, he found me by the fire pit. She called me. "You know," he said. "Eyes on the flames. Elise?" "Yeah, about a week ago." Said she'd been thinking, that she regretted how it all went down, that she hoped we could maybe find a way back. I raised an eyebrow. "What did you say?" He took a sip of his beer. "I said I already did find my way back. Just not to her." I nodded. "Good." He looked at me then, serious. "You were right. About everything." I didn't want to hear it then, but I get it now. Love isn't supposed to feel like leverage. It's supposed to feel like trust. "You'll find it," I said. "Hell, maybe you already have." He grinned. "Maybe." We didn't need to say more. Some things are better left unsaid. Once you've survived the fallout together. Emma walked over, slid her hand into mine without a word. Daniel gave her a respectful nod. She smiled back. They hadn't said much to each other before. No need. She already knew the whole story. And more importantly, she knew when to stay quiet and just be. As the night wound down, thought about that vineyard. The drone cameras. The tuxedos. The whispered comments about who belonged and who didn't. And I realized, I never needed their approval. I never needed their circle. I just needed clarity and a clean break. Turns out, losing someone who couldn't see your worth isn't really a loss. It's a filter. It's how you finally spot the ones who do. So yeah, that's the story. I was almost the best man at a wedding that never happened. Almost part of a family I never belonged to. Almost fooled into thinking love was something you earned through sacrifice and silence. But not anymore now. I build smarter, I trust slower, and I never, ever downplay who I am just to make someone else comfortable. Not for family, not for love, not for anyone. Because the right ones don't need a helicopter to know your worth. They just see you and stay.